My name is Eleanor, and at 28 years old, I thought I'd successfully buried my identity as a piano prodigy along with the crushing expectations of my mother. For years I lived as the family disappointment while my sister Beatrice basked in perfection. Then came the announcement that changed everything. During Beatrice's wedding planning, my mother smiled that familiar cold smile and said, "Eleanor will provide some background music during cocktail hour." Not a request, a statement. Little did she know that forcing me back to the piano would be her biggest mistake. Before I dive in, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who was supposed to be your biggest supporter, this one's for you. It gets messy, then it gets very satisfying. I touched piano keys for the first time at 4 years old, and by 6 I was playing pieces most adults struggled with. My mother, Margaret, had been a decent pianist herself once, before marriage and children cut her aspirations short. When she discovered my talent, her eyes lit up with a fervor that should have warned me. "This one has the gift," she told everyone at church, at school, at family gatherings. "Eleanor is going to be the concert pianist I always knew we needed." No pressure, obviously. My childhood consisted of 4 hours of practice daily. Even on holidays, my mother hovering behind me with a timer and a wooden ruler she occasionally used to tap my wrists when my posture slipped, a technique I'm fairly sure doesn't appear in any actual parenting book. My sister Beatrice, 3 years older, was as average at music as she was exceptional at everything else. Golden child, netball star, head girl, dating the captain of the rugby team. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the refrain of my youth. My father, Charles, a solicitor who traveled constantly, mostly stayed out of it, retreating to his study with a muted "listen to your mother" whenever things got tense, the domestic equivalent of "not my department." The pivotal moment came at 16, when I qualified for the National Young Pianist competition. The weeks before were brutal. 6 hours of practice daily, a restricted diet, no distractions. "This is what we've sacrificed everything for," my mother said. Under the stage lights, with the judges' stern faces and my mother's hungry, demanding expression in the front row, something inside me shattered. My fingers trembled. Halfway through Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto, I stopped completely, stared at my hands like they belonged to someone else, then stood, bowed mechanically and walked off. My mother didn't speak the whole drive home. At the house she said simply, "I've wasted 12 years of my life on you." That night, I decided I was done with piano for good. I went to university, majored in accounting, got a respectable job at a city firm. My mother rarely acknowledged my career, instead making pointed comments about wasted potential, the kind of remark that lands somewhere between an insult and a haiku about disappointment. Beatrice, meanwhile, kept climbing. After a top university and a job at a prestigious marketing firm, she met Jonathan Ashcombe, whose family had old money, high society connections, and a proposal ring that required its own postcode. My mother nearly burst with pride. "Beatrice will be an Ashcombe. She'll live on Kensington Row." The wedding became the social event of the season. 280 guests, judges, politicians, even a minor European aristocrat my mother had somehow unearthed. My achievements stayed invisible while wedding talk swallowed every family dinner. "At least we won't have to pay for an extra plate," my mother said once, when I admitted I'd be coming alone. "Those seafood towers Jonathan's mother insisted on are costing a fortune." What no one knew. Hidden in my flat's spare room under a pile of winter coats, sat a digital piano with headphones. On bad days I'd play in secret, a private rebellion, a version of myself my mother had made clear wasn't worth bothering with unless it was exceptional. I never played for anyone, never posted a clip online, never even told my closest friends. It was mine, and mine alone, in a life where very little else had ever felt that way. By then, Beatrice had settled comfortably into her role as the family's pride and joy. She delegated most of the wedding planning to our mother, focusing instead on her career, occasionally shooting me an unreadable glance across the dinner table, as though she sensed something unspoken between us but couldn't quite name it. We'd grown so distant over the years, cast permanently as opposites in our mother's private drama, that a real conversation between us felt almost impossible to imagine. 3 months before the wedding, my mother hosted a formal family dinner to finalize details. 5 courses, calligraphy place cards, and floral arrangements matching Beatrice's color scheme, all somehow filed under just a simple family dinner. Jonathan's mother, Vivian, a sleek, silver-haired woman whose jewelry whispered rather than shouted, joined us. Over dessert, my mother announced the string quartet booking, then turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And for cocktail hour, Eleanor will provide piano music. The chocolate cake in my mouth turned to ash. Excuse me. You'll play the piano during cocktail hour, she repeated, as if we'd already agreed. It saves us hiring more musicians. I haven't performed in over 10 years, I said. It's like riding a bicycle, she waved off. Just background music while people mingle. Jonathan looked politely interested. Vivian curious. My father suddenly fascinated by his dessert. Beatrice uncomfortable. I actually can't, I tried. After everything we invested in your lessons, my mother said, voice hardening. You can't manage a few simple pieces for your own sister's wedding? When my father gently suggested I shouldn't be forced, and Beatrice offered to hire someone else, my mother refused to yield, and then delivered the blow with practiced precision. Unless, of course, you're still too traumatized by your failure at that competition to help your own family. My greatest shame, weaponized and dressed up as concern. To refuse now would confirm everything she already believed about me. Fine, I said. I'll play. Her smile was triumphant. I'll send an approved list. Nothing showy. Just pleasant background music. Afterward, Beatrice caught me in the hallway. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. You know how she is. I remember how amazing you were. She said, hesitating. You could play circles around that quartet. It was the first genuine moment between us in years. The next morning my mother's email arrived. A document titled Appropriate Wedding Selections. Bland, elevator music pieces, with a note underneath. Remember, this is Beatrice's day. Keep it tasteful and unobtrusive. Unobtrusive. That's all I was to her. Background noise to fill space until the real celebration began. The digital piano came out of hiding that weekend. I set it up in my living room and, bracing for dread, felt instead a small, unexpected thrill as my fingers found their way through a simple C major scale. That night I played for 3 hours. Rusty, but the foundation was intact, just buried. Playing Debussy again. I remembered that music had once been pure joy, before it became synonymous with failure. I looked at my mother's approved playlist and nearly laughed. Watered-down classics, elevator pop, the musical equivalent of pastel mints. I pushed it aside and returned to Chopin, Liszt, Beethoven instead. Then, mid-practice one evening, a thought stopped me cold. What if I didn't follow her script at all? What if I played something that actually showed what I could do? Terrifying. Exhilarating. That night, for the first time since I was a teenager, I began to compose. Building a melody that had lived in my head for years into something layered, emotional, mine. Over the following weeks I'd come home from the accounting office and play until midnight, shaping it toward a climax that felt both cathartic and defiant. My mother texted for updates. I gave vague reassurances and never mentioned the detour. 2 weeks before the wedding, I called my old friend Chloe. That's either the bravest or craziest thing you've ever done, she laughed when I explained the plan. But you should do it. This isn't just about your mother. It's about reclaiming something that was taken from you. What if I freeze again? You're not 16 anymore, she said. You're not playing for judges or her approval. You're playing for yourself. The nightmares came anyway, frozen fingers, melting keys. But each morning I went back to the piano anyway, coffee in hand, running through the same phrases until they stopped feeling foreign. The piece grew in layers. Hesitant, childlike notes to open, turbulent, pressured passages building through the middle, a discordant breakdown where everything I'd tried to forget came pouring out at once. Then, slowly, a rebuilding into something that fused my old training with hard-won self-acceptance. It wasn't polished in the way my mother would have wanted. It was better than that, it was true. 3 days before the wedding, I played it start to finish for the first time without stopping, and when the last note faded, I realized my face was wet with tears I hadn't noticed falling. Titled it simply Return. My mother's final email arrived that night. Cocktail hour 5 to 6 p.m. Piano in the east corner. The real entertainment begins at 6:30. The real entertainment. Her dismissal barely stung anymore. I'd found something these weeks that her words couldn't touch. I arrived at Camden Hall Gardens 3 hours early. Manicured grounds, a historic manor, a glass terrace over a lake, already swarming with florists and caterers executing my mother's vision. In the bridal suite, my mother, already immaculate in champagne silk, greeted me with, "Finally! You were supposed to be here 20 minutes ago," despite my being 5 minutes early. Beatrice, getting her hair done, gave me a genuine smile. "You made it. Wouldn't miss it." My mother marched me to the terrace to show me the piano, a beautiful Steinway, tucked behind a floral arrangement in the farthest corner, practically hiding behind a wall of white hydrangeas. "Any way to move it?" "Yes. It's perfect where it is," she said. "You're providing ambience, Eleanor. Not giving a concert." She was pulled away almost immediately by a crisis involving the ceremony arch, leaving me alone with the instrument. I lifted the lid, tested the action, and played a few bars of my composition, just to feel the weight of real keys under my fingers again after weeks on a digital one. The tone was warm and rich, nothing like the plastic click of my flat piano. A woman in an elegant navy dress paused to listen. "That's lovely, not the usual wedding fare. Are you a professional pianist?" "No," I said, the old twinge returning. "I work in accounting." "What a shame. You play beautifully." She turned out to be Vivian. When my mother reappeared and heard the compliment, her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Eleanor had some training as a child. "Light music for cocktail hour." "Light music," Vivian repeated, looking at me with new interest, the sort of interest that made my mother visibly uneasy for reasons she couldn't quite articulate yet. Later, I wandered past the ceremony space where the string quartet, proper symphony professionals, were rehearsing. The first violinist glanced over during their break. "You must be the pianist. Your mother said you'd be playing some easy pieces." Easy pieces. Even secondhand the phrase stung. "That's right," I said, not bothering to correct her. Later, near the bridal suite, I overheard Beatrice, unusually vulnerable, telling our father, "Sometimes I think Mum's been planning this day since I was born, and I'm just the mannequin she dresses up." The parallel to my own life stopped me in my tracks. When I stepped in, she admitted, "I've been trying to live up to impossible standards my whole life. Do you know how exhausting that is?" "Yes," I said. "I do." It was the first time I'd truly seen her. Not the golden child, just another daughter cornered by the same expectations. "Play something real today," she told me as I left. "I will." Back on the terrace, my mother straightened my already straight collar. "Nothing complicated. And I've told the sound technician to keep your mic low. Don't worry about being loud." Another quiet demotion. I only smiled. Guests would arrive soon, and I already knew exactly what I was going to play. The ceremony was flawless, exactly as scripted. The quartet precise, Beatrice radiant on our father's arm. Cocktail hour began on the terrace, and I took my seat at the piano, tucked in its corner, invisible as intended. I opened with a gentle Chopin nocturne. No one looked up. Perfect background music, exactly as ordered. 15 minutes in, I slid, seamlessly, deliberately, into the opening of Return. Quiet at first, like raindrops, so no one noticed the shift. Then the harmonies deepened, the melody grew richer, more urgent, and heads began to turn. A small space cleared around the piano as people drifted closer, drinks forgotten. I leaned into it. Turbulent arpeggios, discordant fragments, all the pressure and breakdown of my teenage years poured into sound. The terrace went quiet. I saw the coordinator whisper urgently to a waiter. I didn't stop. By the time I reached the climax, pain resolving into strength, the pieces reassembling into something whole, a crowd had gathered, drinks abandoned, faces turned toward me. Vivian watched with open admiration. My mother pushed through the crowd, her face draining of color as she realized her background music had become the main event. I caught sight of Beatrice gripping Jonathan's arm, my father watching with something like dawning recognition. The final chord rang out and faded into a full breath of silence, then applause spreading fast, thunderous. People I'd never met pressed business cards into my hand. Beatrice broke through the crowd and hugged me for the first time in years. That was incredible. You stole the show. I'm sorry. Are you kidding? That's the most genuine thing that's happened at this entire wedding circus. What was that piece? I wrote it. It's called Return. Jonathan arrived with Vivian, who was already talking about the Arts Foundation gala she chaired. My mother appeared moments later, smile fixed, eyes cold. Wasn't that lovely? Eleanor, the coordinator needs you to wrap up. The quartet's ready for dinner. Actually, Vivian interjected smoothly, I was hoping to hear more during dinner. My mother, caught between control and her new in-laws, hesitated, until Beatrice stepped in. I'd love that. It's my wedding after all. My mother had no choice but to yield. I played again during the salad course, this time with the confidence of someone who'd finally found her voice, watching my mother's carefully composed face struggle to process the fact that she could no longer define me by my old failures. The quartet, to their credit, seemed genuinely delighted to have a reason to sit down and eat something themselves, and one of them even leaned over afterward to ask, quietly, whether I had a card of my own. By the end of the night I'd collected more business cards than in my entire accounting career. A gallery owner, a wedding coordinator who wanted a pianist on retainer, someone's cousin who ran a small record label out of his garage and swore, with great sincerity, that it was basically Motown. Near the dessert table, my mother finally cornered me, smile gone. What exactly was that? I played the piano. Isn't that what you wanted? You deliberately upstaged your sister. Beatrice seemed to enjoy it. She's too polite to say otherwise. She listed her sacrifices, the lessons, the competitions, the tuition, as if love were a spreadsheet I owed a balance on. But for the first time I could see the manipulation clearly, and it had no grip on me anymore. Mom, you put me in that corner to humiliate me. You wanted to remind me, and everyone else, of my failure. That's ridiculous. No. You were putting me in my place, same as you've done since I was 16. Is this some delayed rebellion? I played for me, I said steadily. Because I needed to remember who I am. And who's that? The girl who choked under pressure. The old wound aimed perfectly, but it couldn't reach me anymore. I'm a pianist who stopped playing to please others and started playing to express herself. I'm sorry that doesn't fit your vision. Beatrice arrived just then, defusing things without even trying, insisting the performance had been the best part of her day. It felt real, in a way the rest of this hasn't. My mother, deflated rather than defeated, simply asked if I'd be all right getting home. My father lingered afterward. I should have stepped in more over the years, he admitted, the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. You never disappointed me. I just never said it enough. Then, don't stop again. Whatever happens with your mother, your job, don't give this up. I sat alone at the empty piano as the venue staff broke down tables around me, unsure what came next but certain music would be part of it. A young waitress stopped to tell me her sister's video of my performance had made her cry. It was a small, uncomplicated kindness, the perfect ending to an impossibly complicated day. In the weeks after, my accounting job felt like watching someone else's life through glass. Beatrice called from her honeymoon in Greece, laughing that Vivian had become my unofficial PR agent. You're wasted at that firm. I started therapy, finally examining how tangled my music had become with my mother's approval. Your performance was an act of reclamation, my therapist said. You took back your narrative, not just your music. 2 weeks after the wedding, I met my mother for lunch at a neutral cafe. She seemed smaller somehow, less formidable. That piece, you wrote it yourself? Yes. I called it Return. It was impressive, she said, from her, practically a standing ovation. I finally asked the question that mattered. When you made me play, was it about the money, or about reminding me of my failure? For once, she didn't deflect. I don't know. Maybe both. When you stopped playing, it felt like you were rejecting everything I tried to give you. It wasn't about rejecting you. It was about surviving. Your expectations were crushing me. I wanted you to succeed where I couldn't, she admitted quietly. I thought pushing you would make you stronger. It nearly broke me. We sat with that, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. It wasn't resolution, but it was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Over the following months, I kept up therapy, played at Vivian's Arts Foundation Gala. My mother attended, stiff but genuinely applauding, and started teaching piano to adults in the evenings, discovering real joy in helping beginners approach the instrument without the weight of perfection. Some of my students were absolute beginners in their 40s and 50s, finally getting around to a childhood dream. Others were, like me, returning to something they'd once abandoned. Watching them relax into the keys, without a mother standing behind them holding a ruler, taught me almost as much as it taught them. 6 months after the wedding, I resigned from accounting to pursue music full-time. It wasn't an easy decision, trading a steady salary for something far less certain, but it felt like the first choice I'd made purely for myself in years. Beatrice supported me completely, even offering to help cover a few lean months, which I politely declined. I've spent my whole life being perfect, she told me over dinner one night, turning her wine glass slowly. Checking every box, never putting a foot wrong. I've never had anything that was truly mine, the way you have music. It's not too late to find something, I told her, and I meant it. My father became my most reliable audience, front row at every performance, beaming with a pride he'd apparently been storing up for years. My mother's progress was slower and messier. Old habits resurfacing, the odd critical comment about my choices, but also unexpected moments of honesty, like the evening she admitted quietly, almost to herself, I was never as good as you. Not even close. That single sentence did more to help me understand her than a decade of arguments had. Her perfectionism, her pushing, her need to live a little through me. All of it turned out, had been about her own unfulfilled dreams. Understanding that didn't erase the years of damage, but it made room for something like forgiveness, which I came to realize was as much a gift to myself as to her. A year after the wedding, I released my first album, Return, as the title track. The reviews were kind, the sales modest but real, and none of that mattered nearly as much as the simple fact that I'd finished something entirely my own. At the release concert, with my family in the front row, my father beaming, Beatrice recording everything on her phone, my mother sitting a little stiffly but present, genuinely present, I dedicated the final piece to them. For those who shaped me, for better and for worse, for teaching me that sometimes the longest journey is finding your way back to yourself. My mother had forced me to play at my sister's wedding to remind me of my place. Instead, I found my voice, and the music meant to keep me in the background brought me to center stage. Not just literally, but in my own life. The relationship with her is still a work in progress, some days easier than others, but the silence that used to sit between us has finally been replaced by something honest. And that, more than any applause, feels like the real victory. Have you ever had a moment when something meant to diminish you became the catalyst for reclaiming your power? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe for more stories of transformation. Remember, it's never too late to return to what makes your soul sing. Keep playing your own music, whatever form it takes.